The Church of England has lay readers. Indeed, much of the worldwide Anglican communion has them. I was one, first in the Church of England, then the Anglican Church of Australia. I wish we had them in this diocese. I can think of several people in this congregation who I think would make excellent lay readers and whose ministry support I'd love to have. A reader can do everything a cleric does apart from administer the sacraments. The other big difference being we weren't paid. I had a normal Monday to Friday job as well. My vicar got me to do all sorts of things. Well, I was young and keen, and it will be good experience for you. One was to represent the parish on the local council of churches. I can't think why the vicar would forego that pleasure. Birmingham Cathedral was also part of the council, but rather than the dean being present, or was he a provost in those days, he sent one of his canons, newly arrived from London. It was in this context that I heard, in my innocence, something I'd never heard before, but have heard many times since. I think I might have asked a question about what it was that we believed. This, of course, is a dangerous question. Much better to stick to practicalities, rotas, and the like. In response, the canon said, God's unconditional love. Well, that put an end to the discussion. I had been put in my place, and no one really wanted to talk about what we might or might not believe anyway. I sat there pondering. God's unconditional love. It sounded pucker. After all, who could argue with it? It mentioned God and love, surely a good thing. But somehow it didn't sit easily with me. It smacked of half-truth rather than the whole truth. But I had neither the guts nor, frankly, the ability at that time to say anything more. That was then. Please turn to 1 Kings chapter 9, page 335 of the Church Bibles. Verse 1. Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, and had achieved all he had desired to do. Is it just me? Or does this sound as if Solomon was about to put his feet up? He'd achieved all that he had desired to do. Pretty good, eh? As someone who's battling with a rebuilding project, I have some sympathy with Solomon. It's been 4 years so far, with precious little to show for it. Can I imagine that joyful day when the building is completed? I'll probably feel time for a long vacation. Or maybe it will be 10 years' time and a case of time for retirement. But, joy of joys, the building is complete and in use. A fantastic new kitchen with all the pots labelled T for temple, in case any outside user groups are tempted. Maybe 1 or 2 teething problems. Did the architect put the umbrella stand in the right place? It never used to be there before. But the general consensus is, phew, we did it. Time to put our feet up. When Solomon had achieved all that he desired to do, the Lord appeared to him and said to him, I've shared before how a church warden emeritus at one of my former parishes had said to my predecessor, when he'd suggested praying about a matter, "What's God got to do with it?" Somehow, I can imagine Barry, for that was his name, saying, "What's it got to do with you?" should the Lord appear at an Austin Parish Council meeting, for that was the parish. But it's okay, Barry. God's just here to give us a pat on the back. Verse 5. I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, when I said, you shall never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. Well, that's all right then. But is that the whole truth or a half-truth? Are there what some might regard as inconvenient truths in this passage which refuse to be redacted away? Verse 4. As for you, if you walk before me in integrity of heart and uprightness, and do all I command, and observe my decrees and laws. I recall one of my clergy colleagues inviting me for dinner when I was a curate. Very kind of him. I was talking freely. After all, I was among friends, and I think wine had been served. But then Keith observed, your use of "I should" is telling. I think my wife would have something to say about it. Keith's wife being a psychologist or some such. Oh dear, had I said too much? I think some have the same reaction regarding if, as Keith had regarding "I should." Let's face it, if smacks of conditionality. It gets worse. Verse 6. But if, not only an if, but a but if you or your sons turn away from me and do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them, and will reject this temple. Robert Burns writes, but Mouse, you are not alone in proving foresight may be vain. The best laid schemes of mice and men go often askew, and leave us nothing but grief and pain for promised joy. We may make our plans, but God has the last word. Proverbs 16:1. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Proverbs 19:21. Verse 3, God says, "My eyes and my heart will always be there." There is only one definitive film version of The Great Gatsby as far as I'm concerned, the 1974 one starring Robert Redford and Mia Farrow. It features a billboard for Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, ocularist. This is part of the dialogue. "What you're trying to do is not right, Myrtle. I'm a trusting kind of fellow. I don't think no harm to nobody. But when I know a thing, I know it. Maybe you think you can fool me, Myrtle. Maybe you can. But you can't fool God. God sees everything." That's an advertisement. You're so dumb, you don't know you're alive. I'm not so dumb, I don't know what's right from what's wrong. William Ralph Ing was Dean of St Paul's Cathedral, London, from 1911 to 1934. That's quite a stint, and perhaps that's why he's usually referred to as Dean Ing. He's sometimes referred to as the gloomy dean, but that doesn't prevent him from being right. One of my favourite Dean Ing quotations is, "Whoever marries the spirit of this age will find himself a widower in the next." But another is, "Nothing fails like success." Friends, we are not called to be successful. I wish the word could be scrubbed out from the Christian church vocabulary. What are we called to be? We are called to be faithful. Considering ourselves successful can have dire consequences. It can lead us to take our eye off the ball, to become self-satisfied, complacent, self-reliant rather than God-reliant. It speaks of those who have their 5 minutes of fame and are then forgotten. The UK's Sex Discrimination Act came into effect in 1975, the year I passed from primary to secondary education. I recall a conversation with my mother about it. She wasn't keen, perhaps because it was a product of Harold Wilson's government. I remember thinking that the idea of a woman boss was quite appealing because she'd be a soft touch. I know how very wrong I was, but give me a break. I was only 11. God is not a soft touch, and nor would we want him to be. Justice demands righteousness, and in God, in Jesus, we have a righteous judge. We can thank God for that. At this point, I can't fail to refer to the current political shenanigans in Canada involving our own Member of Parliament. Vancouver Granville has been in the news. I've been led to believe that if Canada stands for anything, it stands for the rule of law. Canadians are law-abiding. No one, no company is above the law, whatever riding their employees or pensioners are in. Are there times when it's appropriate to bend the law, to interfere with it? That strikes me as a very slippery slope. I like to think my sermons are practical, as well as giving you something to cogitate about. They may lead to amendment of life. Here's Karl's practical tip. If you're like me, when you wake up in the morning, the first thing to be discerned is what day of the week it is. Perhaps I ought to take a tip from Chalmers Lodge and the night before blue tack on the wall opposite, today is ... Having determined whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday, I struggled with that one last week. I then start thinking about the day that lies ahead, majoring on such issues as when I need to get up. Actually, what I'll often do is to run a film of what I know or think lies in store. These are the meetings. These are the commitments. These are the people I'll meet. And commit the day that lies ahead to the Lord. Let me walk beside you, Lord, into this new day. I don't say, would you, Lord, walk beside me? Because that places me at the centre of the action. I prefer to try and say, may I walk beside you, Lord, in your action here in Vancouver, Canada. See if I can be of any assistance. May I be your loving helper, Lord. May I walk beside you. If your heart is there with Christ, the rest will follow. As for you, if you walk before me in integrity of heart and uprightness, and do all I command, and observe my decrees and laws. Amen.